Thanks everyone for coming. We have a very important school board decision tonight, and I want to give a press conference. Before that, actually it's going on right now as we speak. The school board is deciding about the fate of this entire community. That is a decision that should be public. It's a decision that should be held in front of the people, not behind closed doors, not in an executive session, but in front of all the people, so we can have an active debate about the future of this school, of the school district, of our taxes, of our small businesses. But let me first tell you something you already know, which is that LIPA is corrupt to its core. It does not work for you. It does not care about you or your family. It does not hear your cries or heed your calls. It does nothing for us except defraud us. There we go. It does nothing for us except defraud us year after year, exploit us, steal from us, and rob this district and all of Huntington blind. And it gets away with it. LIPA is at war with this community, and it seeks our financial ruin. Let me say that again. LIPA is at war with this community, and it seeks our financial ruin. It aims to steal our homes, pillage our schools. It aims to shutter our small businesses and lay off thousands of workers, and it doesn't care because it doesn't work for us. LIPA does not work for us. It works for its bondholders. It works for the people that loaned it money so it could bail out LILCO 100 cents on the dollar. Let me say that again. LIPA doesn't work for us. That's why it doesn't care about us. It works for Wall Street and for its bondholders and for the elites that don't live in our communities, that don't care about our schools, that couldn't care less if the Northport Power Station was in a thriving middle-class community or in a desert. It doesn't care. All it cares about is paying back the $11.2 billion in debt that it incurred in the 90s and the late 80s. A lot of people don't know this, so let's set the table of what's going on. LIPA is suing this community under the false pretense of trying to lower our rates when in reality it is contractually bound not to lower our rates, but instead to take every cent that they save in our taxes that we owe, that they owe us for this school district to pay back the bondholders that loaned it $11.2 billion. In 1996, the debt was 6.7 billion. Today it's 11.2. They're in a debt spiral that they can't get out of. And so they have one of two choices. LIPA can go and restructure its debt. It can go to Wall Street and say, Wall Street, we can't pay this debt. We shouldn't have bailed out LILCO 100 cents on the dollar in the first place, and we need to restructure it. It could do that, option A. Or option B is, it could come for every one of the families in Huntington, especially Northport and East Northport, and say, we are going to rob you of your savings. We're going to rob your children of their future. We're going to take food out of the school children's mouths, books out of their hands, opportunity out of their futures, and we're going to double your taxes while doing it. What do you think they do? What do you think a power company that is a public power company that is run by the government, that is made by the government, who's led by the CEO, Tom Falcone, who is a former energy investment banker for Morgan Stanley, who went to Wharton School of Business, who is now the CEO of LIPA. He's got one job, and it is not to lower our energy rates. It is instead to squeeze us until we break. This is the story of America. This is the story of every day of my life. You all know it. Working, decent people, all of us. We have gotten squeezed for decades. No power, no voice, nothing. And every year our money is stolen and sent to a corrupt axis between the government and corporate elites that don't live in this community, that don't care about us, and that money goes everywhere in the world but here, where we need it. That's what's going on here. And so even if the power plant was worth $1, I would still be against this settlement because it will be $1 taken from this community and given to Wall Street, which will go to international capital markets and will go to every place on earth but here. It's wrong. And it needs to be met with anger and force and leadership. Leadership that we desperately lack right now. Right now, if you live in East Northport, you have no representation. Zero in Albany. Your assemblyman abandoned you, and now your state senator quit in the middle of his term, in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, in the middle of a time in which tens of thousands of his district, the members of his district are getting laid off. Tens of thousands are calling for unemployment, and he is not there because he just accepted a job with some hospital corporation that does not have anything to do with your well-being. Chief lobbyist. And so, Northwell Health, that's the name. And he's the chief lobbyist now of Northwell Health, but he can't start lobbying the state senate because there's a 2-year prohibition. So instead of waiting until December to quit, like anyone with decency would do, so he could help his residents, his voters, for the rest of the year, he quits, he abandons them, he takes $1 million a year, and he leaves you with nothing. And incidentally, wouldn't you know, it coincides exactly with the time in which LIPA is forcing us to settle. We need leadership. We need someone, many people, you, all of you, we need people to stand up and fight. If we don't fight, we will inevitably 100% lose. And if our leaders fail to stand up for us when we need them now. You know, before I got on this issue 4 years ago, we had no leadership on this issue. None. Every elected official, they had no clue what to do. They said, let's see how the lawsuit plays out. When you asked about LIPA, let's see how the lawsuit plays out. And then I stood up and I said, that's not the right way of looking at this situation. We're not going to win by some corrupt corporate court, because that's what this lawsuit is in right now. It is being adjudicated by a court that does not care about our interests. Instead, we're not going to find justice in a court, a commercial court of law. We're going to find justice by changing the law ourselves. And so I wrote a bill. And the bill amended the LIPA Act. It stripped LIPA of the power to sue us for back taxes. It's the same provision that already exists in the law and has for 20 years as applied to Shoreham. Shoreham owed $1.5 billion in back taxes. They didn't pay a cent of it back to Lilco because that provision in the LIPA Act, which barred LIPA from seeking recovery from Shoreham. I extended that provision to Huntington. It took me all about 20 minutes to do. It wasn't very hard. And you think, why didn't John Flanagan, while he was our Senate Majority Leader, do this for us? When the story of LIPA is written, John Flanagan will get a lion's share of the blame for the current situation we are in. Because as Senate Majority Leader, he could have stalled every single piece of legislation, every single one, until he got a bill like mine through. Every single one. He could have held up the entire state government for us. John Flanagan, his children went to high school with me. He lives in East Northport. He owes us an obligation to fight for us. And he didn't. And he had the chance. But if that's not enough, when he was Senate Majority Leader, he could have appointed not one, but 2 trustees to the LIPA board. 2. He had unilateral discretion, unilateral authority as Senate Majority Leader. He appointed 0. Appointed 0. It's unacceptable. There's no good excuse for that. But when he was our assemblyman in the 90s, when the promise was first made, they made us a promise that LIPA wouldn't sue us for tax certiorari's. It was a promise in words only. was on a letter, but it wasn't codified in the LIPA Act. Right there. It's the equivalent of someone making you a promise in a business transaction, but the promise isn't included in the contract. Well, who was our lawyer on that? It was John Flanagan. As our assemblyman, he was supposed to make sure that provision was in the law. And he didn't, and he failed. But this is not partisan. I'm not picking on John Flanagan, because it goes both sides. Our governor has not stood up for us enough. He's been silent on this issue. Many Democrats have. This is not a partisan issue. In order for us to defeat LIPA, we have to put our politics in the closet. We have to keep it at home. Because if we talk about Democrats or Republicans, we're going to be divided. LIPA doesn't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. They'll lobby you all the same. They'll take you out to dinner if you're a Democrat, and they'll take you out to breakfast or lunch if you're a Republican. They don't care. They pay campaign contributions to Republicans and Democrats. They put their politics in the closet. This community needs to as well. Because if we let politics define this, if we let politics get in the way of this issue, we will be divided and we will not win. But we can win. We can win very easily. We can win by doing two things. First, the immediate problem is stopping this disgracious lawsuit. That means preventing this school board and their town board from settling. We must insist on that. If we settle, we lose everything. We lose our ability to initiate eminent domain proceedings. We lose our ability to appeal a decision to a more favorable court. We lose our ability to ever grieve those taxes again, or to contest the grievance. But the bigger picture is this, and this is why I'm so focused on this issue. This issue bears on every other issue. You care about taxes, you gotta care about the LIPA tax heist. You care about schools, you gotta care about the LIPA tax heist. You care about our environment, you have to care about the LIPA tax heist. Do you get pissed off when you hit a pothole on the ground because we don't have enough money to maintain our roads? You have to care about the LIPA tax heist. Do you care about our police officers having the equipment and the protection that they need to do their jobs? You have to care about the LIPA tax heist, because millions of dollars every year go to our police officers. It's not just to our schools. This bears on every single issue, every single one. And most importantly, it's this. We can't have businesses on Long Island anymore. We can't have manufacturing on Long Island anymore. Do you know why? Because our energy rates are through the roof. Do you know why? Because we have LIPA running our energy supply. And you know why? Because Lilco made a bad investment in a nuclear power plant, and they made us pay for it. Isn't that the story? And you know what? It's wrong. And now they're coming after our savings. And more importantly than winning this suit, which we will win, either by litigation or by legislation, we will win. But is reforming LIPA and our energy economy on Long Island. What do I mean? We have the highest rates in the country. We have the worst service. We can't have businesses here. We can't have manufacturing here because of our energy rates. And you know why? Because we don't control LIPA. We need to reform LIPA and put the trustees under our control. We must have sovereignty over our resources. We must control our own community. You know who owns our resources right now? A UK multinational. Every dollar they get, it goes overseas. We don't have control over the government. We don't have control over the private businesses that government is in bed with. And so, greater than fighting this, which we must do, we must take control of our energy now. We must go up to Albany and reform the LIPA Act, put the trustees under the power of us, and make all of the resources, whether it's the Northport Power Station or the transmission lines, under our control. If we do that, we'll be able to manage it. But not only that, we must eliminate the debt. How do we do that? We need to be honest. We all know we can't pay off $11.2 billion. It's not in the cards. It's never gonna happen. So how do we do it? We need to get New York State as a whole to absorb it. If New York State as a whole, if Upstate and New York City help pay for this debt, 25 cents a ratepayer. 25 cents. If it's for us, it crushes us. Right now, LIPA is bailing out nuclear power plants upstate. We do our part. We're constantly sending money upstate. We're constantly sending money to New York City. New York City has lower rates for the MTA because LIRR customers have to pay more. Upstate New York, they have the taxes from those nuclear power plants because we pay more. If we sacrifice for them, they need to sacrifice now for us. And by the way, they were the ones who did the LIPA bailout in the first place. It didn't come from Suffolk. It didn't come from anyone that lives in this community or in Suffolk County. It came from legislators upstate in Albany. But in the immediate, right now, what we must do is we must demand that this town board, this school board, both of them do not settle. And we do that by asking tonight, President Bedaines, David Bedaines, you ran on opposition to the LIPA tax suit. You ran on opposition to settling. Now it's time to put your money where your mouth is. I implore you to allow me to file on your behalf an Article 78 proceeding, enjoining, meaning preventing, meaning putting a temporary restraining order on any bad decision that this school board makes. I'm asking you as a friend, I'm asking you as a neighbor, I'm asking you as a lawyer, and I'm asking you as a leader. You must do this for us. Being in public office is not about doing the easy thing, it's about doing the hard thing. And the hard thing right now is looking at those LIPA lobbyists in the face and telling them that they will not win this. Because if they defeat us here, the shadow that LIPA casts over this entire community will soon blacken every square inch of Long Island. Because they're coming after every other community after us. After us, every single community. They're suing. They have to. They have to cancel that debt. They gotta pay it off. And so tonight, we must fight. Tomorrow we must fight. This must be our rallying cry, and we must use it not only for our own interests, which we love and care about, not only for our children's interests, but most importantly, for the sovereignty of Long Island and the economy of Long Island. And we must use this as a rallying cry to stop LIPA here. We are the vanguard against LIPA. If they beat us here, they will go to Nassau and force a settlement, and then they will go to every single town, hamlet, village on Long Island, and they will do the same. We have our children's futures at stake. Your taxes will double, your stores, your small businesses will close. And so, that's about it. That's all I got right now. Jordan, you want to say anything?
I agree that I think your request that School Board President David Bedaines allow you on his behalf to file an Article 78 is brilliant. I think you should strongly consider it.
The reason I'm not filing it, which I would be, is because you don't have standing to file an Article 78 unless you are on the school board. It's one of the other tricks about the New York State legal system. We don't have any power as taxpayers. One would think if you pay the taxes to the school, you can sue, and you can have standing to sue what the board does, but you don't. It's another thing that we must change. We must secure for ourselves and our families political power now. Political power, power over LIPA is a start. Thank you.
That was awesome, though.
It was a little rambly, but
no.
We have to text back to David Bedaines.
No, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, whoa, okay, that was good timing. Listen, we have to text back to David Bedaines.
This is too big to text. I can tag him.
You're so on point that thing wasn't even. Pow! That was awesome. Thanks.
So you just recorded that one, and that was the
That
last
was really good.
I know, we didn't shake hands.
Okay.
Now you go. I'm like, of course you're doing
Well,
that.
with the mask on, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.